GM. So, Thursday, 9th of May. Audio quality might not be the best. In fact, I think it's actually okay. It's usually quite loud like this, but I'm not using my mic. I'm just using the laptop literally on my lap because I'm not at home. I'm moving houses, so I'm in between two places at the moment. And gonna have an absolutely fucking sick new office though, so once that's all built and ready, I'll show you. But until then, GM. Market is, well, altcoins are stronger than BTC at the moment. So when Bitcoin's weak and altcoins are outperforming, it's typically not a good sign. It's typically a sign of quite a late stage move. And so let's look at where we're at here. As Bitcoin moved up into the highs, short squeeze, lower and lower short liquidations, and then the long liquidations are picking up here as we decline. No signs of a bottom yet, just a very orderly unwind so far. Not what I would consider to be a clear or clean bottom, no final capitulation, no liquidation candle yet. ETFs, weak. So it goes without saying now, like, people, I don't know which day it was, maybe it was Weekly Outlook. I said a lot of people are looking at Bitcoin's chart here, right? A lot of people were looking at this and saying that it was reminiscent of the move back here, where we dipped down below, we reclaimed. It's going to trend all the way through the range. Well, that's invalidated already, just by what it's done. But the point I made was, it took hundreds of millions of ETF inflows unexpectedly, because nobody, if you remember back in January, the reason we went down to 39 is because Bitcoin was so weak, because there was so much grayscale selling, and there were outflows, right? If you look at the full data, there were mostly outflows at the beginning, in the first week or two, right? Obviously, first 2 days, massive inflows, even with Grayscale. But after that, Grayscale were really overwhelming the rest. And then it started to pick up. We started getting hundreds of millions every day, even despite Grayscale, hundreds of millions. And that drove this unexpected rally. Now, we're up. A few things are different. We are up double from there, pretty much. Not double, about 70%. So we're 70% higher, with more positioning, so more people long, which means you need even more demand to keep it up. And we don't have ETF inflows, which is just clear as day now. I said this last week. That was panic selling, and this was panic buying, right? The 560 was too much selling, definitely marked the bottom. The 378 and the 217 basically equals what flowed out on the first, right? Give or take. And given the fact that we then had a bunch of zeros yesterday and a bunch of zeros on Tuesday, tells me pretty clearly that there isn't the demand, like the consistent demand for BTC is not back yet. And all it was too much selling on one day and then buying it back on a couple of days. That's consistent with where we're at in terms of the market, right? It's just not bullish. Completing this potential Wyckoff, but I said this on stream last night. This is not, and Wyckoffs are never confirmed until a lot more needs to happen, right? But if you're looking at it, a lot of people look at it and say that this was the spring. That is more of a show of weakness to me. Several reasons. High volume, right? The highest volume has been at the lows. The highest volume has been in the selling, right? And even this rally off the lows, most of that was concentrated down at the low. It closed green because the candle closed green. But if you look at the delta candles, there was a lot of selling. So it's heavier selling into the lows, and when it bounces, the bounces are below average. The bounces are weak. So it's quite clear that there's more weakness than strength. There's no demand from ETFs. And so unless really what people are hoping for is that someone's going to defend 60k. And I mean, 60k has been defended pretty well up until now. But let me just get another, I just want to add another chart here so I can get a clean, fresh chart to do volume profile on, volume analysis. So people are talking about that. It's really, 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 really simple. And how much did I say this last week? 64k has to flip. If it doesn't flip the bands, doesn't flip the 50 EMA, it's not bullish. Came right up to it, tested it, and rejected. That's more bearish. Right? That's not, the fact it went there is not a good thing when it rejects. That shows and confirms bearishness. It's like when you break down like that. That's not a great place to short because it's left a big gap. Bounces up, retests, fails, gap's filled. That's the perfect retest. Like that's all this is. Broke down, left the gap, retested it. Currently. And you can only go with what's happening, not what you want to happen. We all want Bitcoin to go to fucking 200k. Our bags will just explode and we'll make loads and loads of money, but it's not how the market works. So, since the all-time high candle, here's where we're at. We have a value area from 62.6 up to 69 of the entire top, right over to where we're at now. And currently, we're outside of that value area low. So basically, the main bulk of the distribution has the highest concentration at the low. So the POC, which generally tends to be somewhere towards the middle, is actually near the lows. And price has lost that with 2 daily closes and is now below and into this gap and building value there, which is that's how trends move before they go lower. So again, for me, I've got some very easy invalidations. If Bitcoin can close through 62.6, it'll be like the first early sign of strength. Still wouldn't call that super strong, given what's above, but it's definitely constructive. If it can close above 63.3, that's another level on the lower time frames. Right, 63.3 is an important level on the low time frames for me. Up here, right, it has to flip all of this. There was a big battle going on there in the breakdown. So getting above 62.6, which is up here, and then 63.3, which is about here, and then of course 64, which is the one that really matters. So they're the levels that it needs to reclaim. I don't think Bitcoin is going to go and try and reclaim that and drop off, or try and reclaim this or try and reclaim that. I don't think it's going to give any bounce. And if it's going to hit these, at least the way I know Bitcoin price, it's probably going to try and go lower once if it's bullish, right? It's going to try and go lower once. It's going to reject 60k holds. And then it's going to consolidate here, looking like shit, and it's just going to blast through all that. It's not going to stop at 62.6. It's not going to stop at 63. It's not going to stop at 64. It's going to take all of it, probably to the highs, and then we'll see where we go. So if we spend a couple of days around here, unable to go lower and chopping, and 60k is holding, and it's building, and it's squeezing, and it's volatility compressing, and we start to move up, if we start to tag those levels, right, if we tag 62.6, I don't see it stopping. I think it just rips through everything. So that'd be like one upside path, but make no mistake, obviously I'm expecting downside. There's nothing else you should expect here. If something's weak, just say it's weak. If something's rejecting the high volume levels, just say it's weak. If something is testing key daily market structure and rejecting, just say what it is. If something's testing the bands and failing to flip them, if it's testing the 50 and failing to flip it, just say what it is. It's weak. That's it. Not more to it. The 100 EMA might act as a short-term magnet. That's around 60. That might be a good place for double confluence. 100 EMA plus 60k round number could hold. And then below that, like these targets, even though I'm short biased, so I'm trading on the short side mostly, as long as this setup remains. I'm not looking at anything below here because it doesn't exist yet, right? You know the main level, which I've been consistent with as well. It's 58.2 pivot. Goes all the way back to 2021. This chart doesn't go back that far because I put an extra spot market on. But that's the pivot level. It's basically the daily close of these two candles. That is the biggest level. That's the single biggest thing holding us from going to 48, in my opinion. 48.8 to be exact. 48,800, which was the next pivot I had. And these are old. If you've been around, you know these aren't new. These are old levels. And that was a level that was marked out before. No, it was 48,000, sorry. And then it was 40.8, right? I have these all on a bunch of different charts, but I've got too many charts. But these were all marked out ahead of time. You can see how prices respected them because they were key levels from 2021, 2021, sorry, and 2022. And that framed a nice 3rd of December to 10th of Feb. That's about 10 weeks. Consolidation in there. Hasn't been retested since it broke out from it. Coming back to that level and holding it, failing to break down into it, would constitute quite a nice higher low. Also, though, it'd be a very deep correction if you drag from the wick to the top and just look at a fib. It would be a 75% pullback from that whole trend leg, which I'm not sure we'll get. We've obviously had way more than 75% pullbacks in the past on Bitcoin. You know, Bitcoin has had, goes without saying, Bitcoin's had 100% pullbacks, right? Here, pulled all the way back. So it can happen. However, that was at a later stage in the bull. It was also after China banning fucking crypto mining, which was a genuinely huge negative. So I'm not holding out. You know, I'm certainly not waiting for a 75, but how far have we pulled back so far? In the context of this trend, we haven't even pulled back 50%. We've just tried to wick to it. So a retest of that level for a 50% pullback in a bull market, nothing strange. The 618, the golden pocket everyone talks about, but then whenever it doesn't suit their bias, they don't want to trade it. It's funny how that works, right? People talk about the golden ratio and the fibs and the pullbacks, but just like anything, if it doesn't align with how they actually want price to go, suddenly it doesn't exist. But that's pretty nice confluence if you're a fib lover, because the 618 is basically here, right at the 200-day EMA, and right at the 200-day SMA as well. So this little cluster, which also is right at the point of control of the entire up move here. So from the up move from 39 up to all-time high, this consolidation where price stopped over is where we had the highest volume. So you've got the high volume node. Why does that matter? Because that's where the most positions were built in all of this. So from the low to the high, the most positions were built, the most trading took place at that level, meaning buying and selling. And so when we got above that, that means the buyers are in control. And if the buyers won this battle and pushed it all the way to there, the theory, auction market theory, would be that when price comes back to that level, you could see those strong hands step in again and provide support. Now, that was double confluence. So you got the volume confluence, volume profile. You got the fib at 0.618. You got the 200-day EMA and the 200-day SMA. So EMAs and SMAs, why do they have relevance? Because people use them, just like anything, just like a trend line, just like on-chain data, just like economic data. Other people see it and they ascribe some value to it. Doesn't mean it is magical, But EMAs and SMAs, especially the high round numbers, 50, 100, 200, they will have orders. People will be waiting to buy or sell above or below them. So you know there's liquidity there. You know there's going to be liquidity that it's going to be attracted to there. If we lose this low, there's a gap, huge gap. Like there's no volume traded in between, so it should shoot down pretty quickly. And then tag all of that. So I look at that and think that would be a really nice place to get along. And so it probably won't happen because that's my subjective experience of Bitcoin. But I also know that price goes to where people think it can't go. And I think people are still quite resistant to the idea. Well, I know they're very resistant to the idea of Bitcoin going lower because it's bad for their altcoin bags. And the majority are still overexposed to alts. And it'd be interesting to see. But any of this, like all of this is not like a call for this level to come. It is clear to me that right now, Bitcoin's bearish on basically every time frame and by almost every measure, on the lower time frames at least, the time frames I trade, until it isn't. And if it reclaims this 64, boom, all of that's invalidated. Daily bands go green, where we target new highs. Simple. If it's below here, building value in this area, I'm expecting if it loses 58.3 and isn't able to reclaim it, we could actually see it go down there. And that would probably really gather strength. Maybe it quickly wicks down to 48, maybe not. And that's your upside. So that's it. GM. Later on I'll do all kind of requests. GM.